HUBs that provoke. This book is trying to air some of my views, perhaps uncommon and controversial, about a few issues that we constantly grapple with. All my observations may not be fully and unquestionably right, nor will they be a farce, and completely devoid of merit. Written by Roy T. James. Part 9. Chapter 49. Why Democracy? Let us talk about governments. I think it will be correct to say, no two governments, past or present, are exactly the same. However, it is possible to examine the similarities and differences among political and economic systems and categorize different forms of government. One simple way to categorize governments is to divide them into democratic and authoritarian political systems, as all the existing governments show a predominant tilt towards either of the two. Democracies. Many countries today claim to be democracies. This form of government is widely applauded due to their citizen-friendliness, let us say, the charm of democracy, which is largely seen in areas such as freedom of speech, the press, and religion. Democracies in general respect these basic individual liberties. No government allows absolute freedom, but democracies do not heavily censor newspapers and public expression of opinions. Majority rule with minority rights. In democracies, people usually accept decisions made by the majority of voters in a free election. However, democracies try to avoid the tyranny of the majority by providing ways for minorities all kinds to have their voices heard as well. Varied personal backgrounds of political leaders. Democracies usually leave room for many different types of citizens to compete for leadership positions. In other words, presidents and legislators do not all come from a few elite families, the same part of the country, or the same social class. Free, competitive elections. The presence of elections alone does not entitle a country to be a democracy. The elections are fair and competitive, and the government or political leaders cannot control the results. Voters have real choices among candidates who run for public office. Rule by law. Democracies are not controlled by the whims of a leader, but they are governed by laws that apply to leaders and citizens equally. Meaningful political participation by citizens. In addition to voting rights, the government responds to citizen demands and the candidate they choose actually take office. If the general populace contact government in other ways, writing, protesting, phoning officials to respond. Authoritarian regimes. One ruler or a small group of leaders have the real power in authoritarian political systems. Authoritarian governments may hold elections and they may have contact with their citizens, but citizens do not have any voice in how they are ruled. Their leaders do not give their subjects free choice. Instead, they decide what the people can or cannot have. Citizens, then, are subjects who must obey, and not participants in government decisions. Kings, military leaders, emperors, a small group of aristocrats, dictators, and even presidents or prime ministers may rule authoritarian governments. The leader's title does not automatically indicate a particular type of government. The distasteful or repulsive elements of such a regime have been acknowledged as. Authoritarian systems do not allow freedoms of speech, press, and religion, and they do not follow majority rule nor protect minority rights. Their leaders often come from one small group, such as top military officials, or from a small group of aristocratic families. Examples of such regimes include China, Myanmar, Cuba, and Iran. No nation falls entirely into either category. Both democratic and authoritarian governments change over time, rendering the global mosaic uncertain and complex. The prevailing idea is that democracy is heaven, while authoritarian regimes are different forms of hell. Anything and everything happening in each of these regimes are looked at through a filter. Thus, in democratic countries, anything unsavory is seen as an unfortunate event that needs to be dealt with while strengthening the governance, whereas, in other countries, the same unsavory event becomes another proof for the unsuitability of governance. My view. Something is incongruent here. We are always comparing the desirable elements of democracy with the elements acknowledged as the distasteful part of other types of regime. And we always find the former more acceptable to us, and the latter abhorrent, as can be expected. I think as a result of this rather illogical comparison, we have always coming up with democracy as the answer, without ever having learned the disadvantages and dangers of democracy. This inter alia proves my argument I proposed in my book, The Unsure Male, that her predilection for democracy is due to something else. What is the weakness of democracy? I think we are in the dark about this, thanks to the fact that none of the great stalwarts of democracy since the ancient times mentioned about the possible dangers of democracy. We have been continuously deriving whatever benefits we expected to gather, and hence, we never felt the need to ponder any further. Let us compare this form of rule with other forms, in performing the various necessities of governance. The disadvantages of democracy go into a long list. 1. It might allow misuse of public funds and time. Democratic governments can lead to wasted time and resources, considering that it takes a huge amount of time on formulating laws and requires a lot of money to be spent during elections. It is also highly possible that the country will be ruled by incompetent and irresponsible leaders who will just spend public funds for their own tours and recreation. 2. It instigates corruption. Those who are elected to power might resort to unethical means for personal interests and engage in corrupt practices. During their tenure in office, they might take advantage of authority for personal gains, putting the interests of the masses in the backseat. 3. It risks the wrong choice of public servants. Truth be told, not all individuals under a democratic government are aware of the political and social circumstances in their country. In a voting system, majority wins, and there is no distinction between the votes cast by the literate and the illiterate. People may favour a candidate based on other factors other than pure and acquired capability. Taking these things into consideration, the elected official may not always be the perfect person for the seat, leading to erroneous decisions. 4. It allows not exercising the right to vote. Sadly, in some democratic countries, people fail to exercise their right to vote. Perhaps they are reluctant to do it or are just less aware about the impact of their votes, or perhaps they do not see it as a privilege and take the process less seriously. 5. It may put more emphasis on quantity rather than quality. Another disadvantage of democracy is in terms of providing services. It tends to put more emphasis on quantity rather than quality. Also, considering that the system might be governed by irresponsible and incompetent leaders, equality might be in question, for only the rich and famous might be prioritized more than the poor. 6. It can take a long time and much effort to make decisions. Because it takes too long to make decisions, it will also take too long to implement them. Unlike in a monarchy where one person is making decisions that are implemented quickly, democracy requires majority voting and implementation, thus it is relatively less prompt in taking actions. 7. It may involve immoral practices during elections. To lure the masses, election campaigns might involve immoral practices, where candidates would use muscle power to draw the majority of votes, even trying to tarnish their opponent's reputation. Money and power may be abused to influence the people to disregard opposing parties. The first thing we can notice is that all the people in a country will have to take part in this form of governance, unlike all the other forms. Many among them, as candidates, a few more, as elected officials, and a very large multitude to keep the signature elements of a democracy, parties, debates, movements, etc., alive. It means that a large chunk of citizens' efforts is spent in this rather non-productive activity, which, in other forms of governance, could have been of use for greater needs, say, of nation building. Over a period of time, the cumulative effect of this system of governance shall be visible at all levels of material as well as the cultural state of society. We do not directly observe this, as all our states are following similar patterns of governance. However, the rate of intellectual growth of the bygone eras is a clear sign if we are to compare the rate of progress of present millennium with the one achieved for a similar period in the earlier days of mankind. Simultaneously, we can see that systems other than democracy, while not saddled with any of these disadvantages, hide significant advantages. The part of populace needed to be busy with governance-related tasks, which in any case consists mostly of mundane activities of non-productive nature, is much less. As a result, a much greater proportion of the populace can involve in activities of productive nature that can lead to better living standards and brighter future. leaving aside such clear benefits of other systems and overlooking its entire disadvantage. We are clinging on to this form of governance. That can't be due to fear of misrule and other forms of governance. We, I think, are continuously deriving too much pleasure from the tasks imposed on us by democracy. But not only that none of these tasks seems to have the power to add to any of the natural ways of deriving pleasure, but also keeps a huge populace away from other activities that could have enhanced life's pleasures. This then is the reason democracy keeps us busy. It acts as a good digression for man. In the case of man, the essential need of a digression for a comfortable existence has been discussed in my book, The Unsure Male. Chapter 50. Why should we have political parties? Why should we have political parties? Human is different from all other forms of life. Only the animal and human is social. This can be confirmed easily if we pay attention to the fact that all discoveries and inventions are individual streaks of brilliance, or take our approach to serious issues, especially on matters of defense. It is a well-established tactic by all military-trained forces to split and reposition itself with as low a profile as possible, to escape from dangers. All our achievements and successes also fall into what can be called streaks of personal excellence. But, for doing the most important job in relation to our existence itself, the formation of a political identity, we have opted for political parties, and it has become the ultimate organization of our society. How did it happen? Why did we take this seemingly unnatural route? The earlier days of democracy would have been great, the vast treasure of ancient literature pointing to unparalleled intellectual wealth. To note one thing we can deduce from the signs left by bygone eras. It is possible that there was a minuscule group of disgruntled elements who wanted to do something to harm the flourishing society like we find these days in all our endeavours. It looks like a few of them joined together and formed themselves into a group, calling themselves a party. And since that day democracy has never been the same. I think democracy as we follow leaves a lot to be desired as a well-known fact. There is no one who hasn't felt the incongruities of party democracy, I suppose, since improvements are being contemplated for the existing political system of governance in all democratic countries. Otherwise, what is the need to devote a lion's share of governmental efforts, not towards the activities of governance, but in bettering governance? But it has been so since the earliest days I can remember. I have attended scores of political meetings, where allocating resources for improving the existing system governance was cited as the most urgent need facing the nation, to justify additional taxes and other expenses. Nowadays also, this remains as a priority area for all governments. It seems we have not been able to improve our system of governance, or we failed in identifying the right cause for democracy's not being able to deliver the goods. In fact, it is the party or party politics that have destroyed the fundamental character of democracy, one that makes it self-governance, by unceremoniously negating the primary condition which would have ensured rational decision-making at all levels, that all who participate will do so according to their free will. The party system has converted democracy to a maker of qualified decisions. Not only that, it has reduced the function of opposition to one of always opposing the ruling side, a rather meaningless task. As a result of this, in cases where such decisions do not produce the desired effect or lead to a failure, rather than re-examining the decisions, the ruling side can always find an easy excuse: the opposition. The advantage of party politics is that no failure gets attributed to one party who can gloat in case of success. Another party can shoulder all failures with impunity while sharing the glory of success. This, I think, is a time for a reckoning. We can delay the horrific future ahead of the human race, which I have described elsewhere, if we re-imbibe the meaning of party to make it help humans grow, unlike what is mentioned above, in which case, it will act as a facilitator to let populace enjoy the glories of success while providing a platform to absorb the shocks of failure. This can let our society follow its natural path. Chapter 51. Do we have a penchant for the natural? Is our penchant for the natural? Man, by nature, is always on the lookout for something beyond. If so, what is behind our predilection for the natural? Nowadays especially, there is so much value attached to the word. Things like all-natural whole-grain goodness, or non-toxic, all-natural, Household cleaning kits are the common marketing jargons of today, amply proving this. But it was not so some time back. Things like fortified grain, vitalized oil, were those in great demand. Now we are discarding the fortified or vitalized stuff, giving it a rather repulsive term, artificial, and choosing the rather feeble ones in lieu, naming them, of course, with a rather agreeable word, organic. Why? I think we, the people, make societies. Therefore, societies behave like people. Our behaviour and priorities in life are not the same in our childhood, youth, or old age. In a similar manner, societies, and nations which are constituted by the societies, also have their priorities changing over time. Thus, when the world was in its childhood, which, let us say, is the period before the Industrial Revolution, we witnessed a rather low demographic, cultural and economic status. Great empires would have arisen, but they all perished, leaving scanty remains. The period thereafter shows a burgeoning society that is making fast and steady leaps forward. We were at home with great changes, explorations, and successes. Every such discovery and each new invention was absorbed by us with an open mind. Our social parameters kept changing continuously to keep pace with the world's growth. Now I think the world is entering its old age. The signs that we see everywhere of decadence and an agitated and unstable state of societies, I think, is an indication that the present organization of the world is an unsuitable one. Our first reaction to a novel idea, unlike in the past, is one of acute resistance and a desire for suppression. What else does this signify but the need for new research about a better method of organizing humans? Whether a society based on gender differences, or another based on linguistic, economic or spiritual affinities, or something altogether different, shall serve for the future. We can confirm this just by looking around. See any nation of the world. Everywhere, it can be seen that there is a flurry of the ridiculous. More and more irrational happenings are taking place. Excessive religious fervor that is destroying our society, a strong desire for the traditional that is restricting free movement, especially of females, as well as a visible antipathy to the modern that is of no good to anyone, are a few noticeable proofs of this. Our penchant for the natural is just another example of the irrational. Chapter 52. Are we sober towards alcohol? Our approach to alcohol. Alcohol and its effects have always been a dear topic in our society. Strategies focusing on the supply of alcohol beverages, regulation of drinking premises, policies that shape drinking practices, and practices aimed at regulating the hazardous environment of drinking are some of the reactions of the society aimed at controlling this behavior. These reactions have been either concentrating on the drinkers, with focus on health effects, social degradation or appearance of public sobriety, or on alcohol, with focus on availability of alcohol in rationing, taking the profit out of selling alcohol, or other approaches to controlling its production. Functionally, or attack on the ill effects of alcohol consumption can be thought of as belonging to any of the following. A. The colonial view. That it is only a pleasant custom. Overindulgence shows the weakness of character. B. The temperance view. That it is alcohol, which controls the drinker. Hence, rather than attacking your brothers, a restriction in its sale should be the tactic. C. The alcoholism view. That this is a disease. Hence, what is needed is neither contempt nor tactic, but sympathetic treatment. D. The epigenetic view. That this is influenced by one's genetic makeup. Possible methods of alteration need be studied. I think it is evident. The colonial view is a natural one. It is quite similar to how we think about all other issues. Someone follows the incorrect diet, sports unhealthy sleeping habits, or otherwise entertains behavioral quirks that are dangerous to one's health. We do not immediately jump to a conclusion, say, environmental or other abstract causes led to it. We analyze, explore possibilities and arrive at a reason, which in this particular case being just carelessness, and then issue appropriate strictures, impose restrictions, or award punishments. But when it came to alcohol, we didn't stick to colonial view for long. We conducted extensive studies, changed our viewpoints and moved from the natural path. Why? I remember an incident from my student days. We friends were strolling down the country road to his home and he One of my classmates had to face a serious scolding from his neighbour. He wanted to react, but stopped, changed his direction, took us to a nearby toddy shop, had a bit of the local brew, and then took us all back to the neighbour with whom he had a serious altercation. He replied with choicest expletives, threatened those people with very serious consequences to follow if they don't apologise immediately, and left that place only after getting all that he asked for. Back at home, when I asked whether the detour for toddy was essential, my friend's philosophical reply was, "The ambience of a drunken personality radically alters the effect of whatever I am going to say, making it many folds." I think that is the reason. Those at the receiving end will feel things with greater impact if coming from a drunken source. It has to be so, since, "Why did you argue with a drunk?" will be the common refrain to greet one, to belittle the injuries one received from a person who is not sober. And those doing wrongs will be handed with the lesser blame if they happen to be in a drunken state. Those at the other end can also be greatly relieved. They won't have to assess their kin, neighbours or good friends as bad people. For being drunk is a well-tolerated excuse. It permits one to engage in bad deeds without the risk of losing one's character. All these add to what is giving the drinkers the drive to drink. But it is a fact that people behave awfully low when they are drunk. Unimaginable cruelties, merciless and harsh brutalities and other deeds of unbelievable inhumanity are associated with the drunken. What can we do? If we are to show our reactions correctly, many known people, friends, relatives and, at least some of our idols will have to be termed unsociable. We then take a safe path, direct our ire against the next obvious culprit, alcohol, and free ourselves from the horror of blaming our near and dear. Many new, different approaches to this topic, like the temperance view, the alcoholism view, and the epigenetic view, are necessary for keeping the discussion alive. Else, there is a possibility that the initial, colonial view may prevail, forcing a rethink about our moral strength and standards. We know alcohol is not as harmful as we proclaim it to be. But since we do not want to admit that we are not as good as we ought to be, we continue firing our guns pointed at alcohol. Chapter 53 Cryo-Governance, Government of the Future. Yes, we are certainly noticing human societies, say countries, are everywhere in disarray. We instantly attribute this, either to leaders, or to the people, or to certain abstract causes like religion or language. We have never bothered to correct the entity in disarray, the state. Let us try to understand the present arrangement of human society. What we have now is exclusive power for the state, to collect money from the society, explicitly as a tax. State then serves the society, whether the society asks for it or not. State asks the people to pay tax, whether people are ready or not. People then struggle with taxes, looks for ways to escape, and they succeed in lessening their burden to some extent. State then finds itself with fresh wants and legislates for more tax. This is a vicious circle, to say the least. I think we need to think of a new way of governing ourselves, especially the financial system. What is important is to note that, here, all have their parts well defined. The state's part, of collecting taxes and delivering various kinds of services, and the people's part, of paying taxes and enjoying services rendered by the state, are so designed that if done properly, all will be in perfect equilibrium. I think this idea about the state originated along with other ideas of similar vein, like perpetual motion machine, synthesis of gold, etc. We are still going ahead with such notions as far as the state goes, though all other ideas have become nothing but academic curiosities. Thus we have a society, expected to be in peace and harmony with each other, in perpetuity. But it's like the romantic story of the perpetual motion machine. That doesn't happen. Either the state fails in providing services and accusing insufficient collection of taxes as the culprit, or the people unhappy with their life and accusing exorbitant taxes as the cause, takes place constantly. Last many centuries or more we are continuously living with this, the idea of state outliving its original life. Why we can't think of a change. Imagine a society with no taxes of any nature. The state charges a price for the services it renders. Those who are on the higher ends of income or those of a higher standard of living are the ones using more of such services. This then has the potential to distribute the cost of governance in more equitable manner, which is, in more or less true proportion, to those availing the facilities provided by the government. Also, the pricing can be made to suit the doctrines of the society, enabling the government in its favourite pastime of the present, distributive justice. The benefits from such a form of government are immense. There will be a huge reduction in the size of governmental machinery, and a great decrease in the cost of governance. The additional revenue thus available for people's welfare can then be directed to many imaginative and far-sighted schemes. More people can now devote their ability to gainful, productive activities, making life more comfortable. Additionally, increasing the velocity of transactions many-folds with a consequential increase in society's wealth. This has the potential to strengthen the means of government to a comfortable level. And this wealth can now flow back to the society as improvements to infrastructure, further adding to the opportunities of gainful vocations. Perhaps like cryobiology, cryosurgery or cryogenic treatment, all of which offers an unparalleled advantage in giving one the edge in the competition against manufacturing costs, product superiority, as well as process outcome. The proposed system of governance can be called cryogovernance. This can meet the aspirations of the coming generations and become the government of tomorrow. Just like the cryo series of technologies opening up many new vistas for material science, a new form of government, the one shown in the preceding paragraphs being one example, can lead to a whole new bunch of opportunities, both in the generation of revenue and in the provision of governmental services. I think that will make us more future-ready. Chapter 54: How to make democracy dynamic. What system we have of governing ourselves has become costly one. Governing ourselves, the one that does not directly make any value addition to our society, takes a lion's share of the efforts, both from the side of government and from the side of citizens. This perhaps came into existence when the task of governance was simpler and more straightforward. In the early society, where there would have been a dire need for gainful occupations, making fresh opportunities for governance available to the people would have been a welcome effort. Times have changed. All these years of human toil have resulted in a burgeoning society that is always on the move. Functions of governance lost its position of prominence, and with the phenomenal growth of human society, the needs of people and their aspirations have taken the center stage. But the old system of governance is yet to recede to the backstage, as both the ones with power, by refusing to acknowledge their position of insignificance, and the citizenry, by not realizing their position of responsibility, continue to remain with their past. Also, these groups, the government as well as the citizens, do not realize the good that can happen to humanity if all those presently busy with the rather unproductive activity of governance join others in creative ventures. Times also changed everything else, quite radically, except perhaps a few. But all the main areas of governance continued to stick on with the old models of seeking mandate or choosing a skipper, except perhaps, for a few cosmetic changes. The giant leaps that we made in science and technology, though made its mark felt in all dimensions of our social existence, seem to have carefully avoided the tasks involved in getting ourselves governed. This is giving me another topic to think. Is there a natural need for governance? For, was there an inherent need? Governance would have been the first element of the society to adopt the still unproven contributions of, say, modern science. Also, as you can see, in which case, it would have been easier to try such novel ideas without the fear of disrupting a life, unlike food, shelter, security or medication. But if we decide to incorporate changes in the system of governance, many new opportunities exist to integrate modern technology into it. What is the need for such resource-intensive activities like the election? What is the need for such imposing edifices to process and distribute governmental decisions? We can collate wants, opinions, or desires of a large population if the capability of information technology is made to work for us. Also, appropriation of resources or fetching other forms of wealth becomes child's play, that too, with hardly any possibilities of dissatisfaction or mistake, if the phenomenal computing power made available by the digital revolution is put to use. Even the introduction of a new type of governance, real-time government, is possible if all citizens are connected to a central server directing the various elements of government. It can also be programmed to act on the input from citizens thus connected, appropriately, deciding on the continuation of the present government at predetermined intervals, as well as choosing a new government. The process of collecting people's will, offering candidature, and other such elements can be made user-friendly to such an extent that the direct involvement of people in the act of governance is greatly reduced. Also, as and when a citizen feels dissatisfied with government, or any activity of governance, opportunity can be accorded for registering such mismatch signals. Whenever these signals reach beyond a threshold, actions can be initiated for governmental change. Such a structure of governance shall ensure that the society's control over the government, the essential need of democracy, is readily met. The above system enables a larger share of the state's population to devote themselves to productive activities, improving wealth, the standard of living as well as public happiness. Computer programs, in this case, shall be taking over the role of most of the elements of government, leaving a large wealth of population free for productive activities, research or other futuristic needs. Chapter 55 Towards a More Stable Society. How to make human society stable. I think it is common knowledge that human society is never at peace. Further study about this leads to quite a non-intuitive reason: language. Why is human society unstable? The destructive effects of our unstable society could be visible in almost all elements of our society and in any corner of the world, and has been subjected to many a study. I myself have tried to examine the causes of turbulence, which is described in my hub, http://hubpages.com/politics/why is there unrest. However, the reasons for this lack of stability have not been given the attention it deserves. What is stability? It is nothing but the ability to remain balanced, even when there are forces trying to disrupt the equilibrium. Along with the absence of disturbing forces, what is of importance here is the presence of a correcting force, should any deviation occur to whatever is ideal. In that case, why should turbulence cause a society to lose its stability? And what is happening to the correcting force? I think it is clear now. Turbulence in human society is pointing to the inadequacy of such a correcting force. A further proof is that all human societies have been showing frequent disorder in spite of the actions taken to correct the reasons for such a disturbance. If the action taken was appropriate, why should the commotion reappear in some other form? Though we then search for a new cause and administer a new remedy, every time a new instance of instability appears. Those involved in finding a solution for this happen to pay more attention to each instance of instability to find a remedy, thereby missing the bigger picture, the root cause of instability. I think rather than the causes of manifestation of instability, we need to go behind the correcting force. For we humans, isn't language the correcting force, which has the power to unite us, or to keep us divided? When examining this area, I observed a peculiarity, a regular inconvenience we all face in our life. That is, I find it difficult to take a position which is neither in full agreement nor in total disagreement with an entity. I am forced to agree with the idea completely or oppose it fully, for maintaining my ease of position. In fact, it is the absence of a unique word or a special expression for such an attitude as the one that compels the mankind to a position of conflict, even in cases where there is no natural cause for a divide. A word that is capable of putting one neither in full agreement nor in absolute disagreement with a given idea. It is strange that, all through history, rather than correcting this by coining, perhaps, a new word or expression to mean a mean path, we humans have been forcibly choosing an extreme position, either of dislike or of like. We are further cementing this approach by celebrating it as the distinct nature of human species, discounting any chance of a change as years go by. I think languages reflect one's idea of self and all that encompasses it, and our idea of the world around us taught us to think in terms of up or down, left or right, dark or light, and many other combinations of entities that are easily discernible, regular in occurrence, and clearly definable. We saw nature hazy, only on rare events. Now that our foray into the micro-world is yielding new concepts almost every day, with most of which bordering on our ideas of the imaginary. Shouldn't our language be enriched appropriately to reflect this? What can be called a softened outlook giving rise to streams of mellowed vocabulary? The new terminology, in that case, will be having the capability to specify unambiguously of a median path. As a result, something that is not bad need not be mentioned as good. Same way, something not good need not be sentenced as bad either. As a result, humans can be expected to choose a middle path in all one's endeavours, leading to fewer divisions, fewer disagreements, and a more peaceful society. We could have done this long back, but extreme positions were so attractive to us that we overlooked the easy possibilities as well as the looming dangers. As we continue in this manner of life and living, certain fundamental changes can be expected in our philosophy of life. That will change dramatically the way we confront all that we confront. Our reactions are going to be appropriate for those mellowed words, and that shall bring in many fundamental changes with far-reaching effects. And the cascading effect of this rather simple job of making a few changes to our language shall be enough to bring lasting peace to our society. Chapter 56. What is human 40? What are we naturally good at? Or, it is the difference between humans and other forms of life, that we are good for nothing special. Do we need to change our ideas about humans, animals, or both? The most popular view, I think, points to intellectual pursuits, a unique part of the human. But I can't understand this. Whenever we humans attempt something, unless one is careful enough to take whatever precautions are necessary and have constant monitoring all throughout, the end will never be a success. The vast multitude of publicity material, like posters harping on good, safe practices, a permanent part of any workshop, I think is a good proof. But we are confronting this in a different manner, taking errors as a necessary part of learning, a distinct part of humans. Such literature does not specify why for humans only formal learning is a necessity, whereas, whatever other forms of life attempts, unless some calamity occurs, will invariably end in success, that too, with hardly any need for precautions or supervision. Isn't this the main difference between humans and other forms of life? Take the case of food. Firstly, unless one takes care to find out, one can never know that there is a need to examine carefully whatever is there to eat. And only when such examination is done, we can know whether it is fit for eating. More than that, unless one eats food chosen in a particular manner, one may land up with health problems and deficiencies. In short, humans have no natural ability even for the basic act of feeding oneself. If we examine further such fundamental activities of life, it can be easily seen that here also, as in the earlier case, we have no innate knack. We need external assistance, or monitoring, or both, even for one of the most basic functions of a species, procreation. And when it comes to the trademark function of humans, thinking, the matter gets a little more interesting. Since here, any let-up in constant supervision and regulatory or societal controls will be felt immediately as irreparable damage, that too, to the future of the species itself. What one can gather from the above is that in earlier days we have been giving vent to whatever natural talents we had, in various forms, both of thoughts and actions. This would have been resulting in skirmishes, wars, pestilence and total destruction. Over a period of time, other aspects of life, like pastimes, intellectual pursuits, and spiritual initiatives, would have come to fore. Only by invoking such ideas in our thinking, we would have been able to channel our thoughts in a rather less harmful direction. Over time, whatever would have been our natural talents originally, gave way to these. My doubt is, as a species, what would have been our forte? What are we naturally good at? Is it art, which is closely connected with beauty, which, philosophers say, is but an excuse for making something desirable, overlooking its lack of utility? Is it the desire to imitate? Is the urge to learn a result of such a desire? If it isn't that, what else? I think our ancient forefathers knew the answer, or at least, they had the inkling that humans are not the ones at the top. They need to learn a lot. For, if we study closely, one can see that, invariably, in all old religions and cultures, the whole collection of supernatural beings and other entities of worship are nothing but animals and beasts. Isn't it possible that the early humans installed as deities whatever they found magnificent, terrific or awesome? And they venerated these deities as good examples of superior techniques for people to learn, imitate or follow. It is possible that such lifestyle continued for many generations. All of us tried to emulate the superior deity each one chose. That is how I think we humans happen to have the full animal kingdom residing within our members. Whether it is one's natural proclivity, choice of skills, dietary preferences, as well as one's qualities and abilities, there is no member of the animal kingdom which cannot find a representative hiding within the human race. Let us look at this from another angle also. We know how to treat rational people. Take for example a rational criminal, that is, a thief, a pickpocket, or someone like that who does engage in crimes for certain reckonable benefit. We always look carefully at the crime, examine the evidence, and mete out to the guilty the most appropriate punishment. But think of an irrational criminal. Depending on the criminal's irrational excuse, whatever reaction the society may show will vary. Mostly that will be some sort of approval, but sometimes may even amount to a half-hearted opposition if the said act is unmistakably dangerous to others. In case the excuse borders on things like religion, one can be sure of support, whatever may be the heinous acts one wishes to do, from some part of the society. We just don't register any act as a crime, as long as it is irrational in nature. Why don't we consider irrational crimes as crimes? Simple. Anything irrational benefits us a lot more. But why have we left it so? And why we are yet not in the realization of this? Also of other beings, who indulge in unregulated fights for rational reasons like food or mate, but move in unison for all other things. Are other beings quite clear about this? I think we need to change our ideas about humans, animals, or both. Maybe things are very simple. We keep on adding complexity and congratulate ourselves that we are capable of learning complex things. Then we remove complexity to get another new thing. It continues. Learning, a staple component of all forms of life, has become a matter of challenge, as far as humans go. The proliferation of tuition centers, not to mention of the help we take from a vast array of audio and visual aids, is but an indication of this.